I was just a chill guy, taking Professor Jack Wu's economics class. Then, bam, I suddenly realized that the final exam was coming. But, I was too chill the whole semester and didn't study at all. Professor Jack Wu was the kindest professor at NCCU. He said, as long as I can answer 3 questions correctly, I can get a 60-point pass. So I decided, I will never chill again. It's time to start my economics puzzle solving mission and strive for victory in the final exam.
Problem 1. On April 2, the Trump administration announced a series of tariffs described as reciprocal, ranging from 10% to 50%, imposed on nearly every country in the world. Taiwan's reciprocal tariff rate was initially set at 32%, but was subsequently reduced to 10% for a 90-day probationary period. During this period, the Taiwanese government must negotiate the final reciprocal tariff rate with the Trump administration. Question 1. What is a tariff, and what is a reciprocal tariff? A tariff is a tax on imported goods to protect domestic industries, and a reciprocal tariff is a mutual tariff reduction through negotiation between countries. However, in Trump's version, the reciprocal tariff is retaliatory, not mutual. He lists more than 50 countries that he thought were hurting U.S. interests, so he set up customized tariffs for each of them. For Taiwan, the tariff rate was set at 32%. Question 2. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect Taiwan's exports to the United States? And how will it directly affect Taiwan's imports from the United States? The tariff made Taiwanese goods more expensive in the U.S. market. Since U.S. consumers will buy less from Taiwan due to higher price, Taiwan's export to the U.S. will decrease. Economy had estimated that a 32% of tariff could reduce Taiwan's export to the U.S. by 60%. On the other hand, since only the U.S. is imposing the tariff, the price of U.S. goods in Taiwan remains unchanged. So Taiwan's imports from the U.S. will not be affected. Question 3. What is a nominal exchange rate? How will the nominal exchange rate be affected by this reciprocal tariff? The nominal exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another. In this case, it reflects how many Taiwan dollars are needed to buy one US dollar. The impact of the reciprocal tariff is that it reduced Taiwan exports to the US, which decreased the supply of US dollars and lead Taiwan's exporters to receive fewer dollars from US buyers. Therefore, in the graph, the supply curve for US dollar in Taipei's foreign exchange market will shift left to the red line. Question 4. Based on your graphical analysis, will the new Taiwan dollar appreciate or depreciate as a result of the reciprocal tariff? So when the supply curve shifts left, it causes the nominal exchange rate to rise, which means we need to use more new Taiwan dollars to exchange one US dollar. Therefore, new Taiwan dollar depreciates. Question 5. How will this reciprocal tariff directly affect the United States net export? The tariff reduced Taiwan export to the U.S., which means the U.S. reduced imports from Taiwan too. So U.S. net export to Taiwan will increase at first. Question 6. What is the real exchange rate? How will it be affected by reciprocal tariff? The real exchange rate is compare the price of domestic good and foreign good in a domestic economy. As we know from the previous question, the reciprocal tariff caused Taiwan export to fall, which means United States import from Taiwan falls too. So when US import from Taiwan falls, it means fewer US dollars are supplied to exchange with new Taiwan dollar. Therefore, in the graph, the supply curve shifts left and increases the real exchange rate, which means the US dollar is appreciated. When US goods become more expensive compared to Taiwan goods, US net export will fall. Question 7. Based on your graphical analysis, will the reciprocal tariff actually improve the United States net export as Trump expects? The answer to this is no. Initially, the reduction in Taiwan's import to the US may increase US net export. But because the reduction in Taiwan's import caused new Taiwan dollar to depreciate, so when Taiwanese goods are cheaper, we will tend to sell them to the US, and it can offset the initial reduction in imports.
Phew, I might still be alive. But this next one, it feels even harder than the last one. Let's see what I'm up against.
At the 2024 Taipei Computex, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang states, "Taiwan is now at the center of AI." This statement was supported by the significant increase in Taiwan's semiconductor exports to the United States and other countries in 2024. NVIDIA and AMD, two global leaders in AI-related technologies, announced plans to establish overseas headquarters and R&D centers in Taiwan. Additionally, many foreign investors purchased shares of TSMC. As a result, Taiwan's economy experienced substantial growth in 2024. Question 1. How would the increase in Taiwan's semiconductor exports to the United States and the rest of the world affect Taiwan's real GDP and overall price level in the short run? Explain your reasoning using both descriptive and graphical analysis. An increase in export means higher net export, which is a component of aggregate demand. As a result, the AD curve shifts to the right, reflecting increased demand for Taiwan's goods and services from abroad. And the short-run effect is the real GDP increases and the overall price level also increases. Question 2. What type of investment is the construction of overseas headquarters and R&D centers by NVIDIA and AMD? How would this construction affect Taiwan's real GDP and overall price level in the short run? Provide descriptive and graphical explanations. This is classified as foreign direct investment (FDI), since it involves building infrastructure like R&D centers. The short-run effect is it increases private investment, which is part of aggregate demand, and this will cause the AD curve shift to right. And the result is the real GDP increases and the price level also increases. Question 3. What type of investment is the purchase of TSMC shares by foreign investors? Do you expect this type of investment to directly affect Taiwan's aggregate demand in the short run? What impact will it have on Taiwan's real GDP and overall price level in the short run? This is portfolio investment, a financial investment, not real capital formation. And the effect on aggregate demand in the short run. It doesn't directly increase aggregate demand because no production or physical investment is involved. And the short run effect is the real GDP and the price level will no significant direct change. Question 4. If the Taiwanese government takes no action in response to the AI-driven economy growth, how will Taiwan's real GDP and overall price level change in the long run? Explain your reasoning using descriptive and graphical analysis. In the long run, the economy self-adjusts. As demand exceeds supply, wage and input prices rise, shifting the short-run aggregate supply curve to the left. The economy returns to the long-run equilibrium at the potential GDP, but at a higher price level. And the long-run effect is the real GDP returns to its potential level and price level increases further. This is the short-run effect. First, the AD curve shifts to the right, and will lead to the price increases and the GDP also increases. And the long-run effect is the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift to left, and this will lead to the price increase further, but the GDP returns to the potential level. Question 5. If the Taiwanese government is concerned about an overheated economy, like assets bubble in the stock and housing market, driven by the AI boom, what type of fiscal and monetary policies could be implemented to cool down the economy? List one fiscal policy tool and one monetary policy tool, and explain how each can reduce real GDP and the overall price level. The fiscal policy tool is to reduce government spending or increase taxes, and the effect is decrease AD and lower real GDP and price level. And the monetary policy tool is to raise interest rates or conduct open market operations, like sell government bonds. And the effect will lower investment and consumption, and it will lead to the decreased aggregate demand, and the result is to cool the economy.
Finally, the last question. Whether I pass or not, it all comes down to this. Let's go, bro.
Okay, now let's get into the problem 3. The opposition parties in Taiwan's legislative yuan have cut various government spending proposals submitted by executive yuan, while the ruling party argues that these budget cuts will harm Taiwan's economy. The opposition claims they are helping the Taiwanese people by saving public money. Now, question 1. How will these budget cuts directly influence aggregate demand in Taiwan? How will changes in aggregate demand affect real GDP and the overall price level in Taiwan in the short run? Provide both descriptive and graphical analysis to support your explanation. And my answer is the aggregate demand curve will shift to left because the government cuts its spending. And in the short run, it will have two effects. That is, first one, price level decreases, and the second, real GDP falls. Because a leftward shift in aggregate demand means less total spending in the economy at every price level. With less spending, firms reduce production, so real GDP, as known as outputs, will fall. And we can answer this question by graphical analysis. Now, suppose we have two lines at first. The first one is short-run aggregate supply, and the other is aggregate demand. Because the government cuts its spending, so the aggregate demand will shift to left. Therefore, makes the quantity of outputs decreases, and the price level decreases. Therefore, we can know that at first we said price level will decrease and real GDP will fall. Question 2. Do you expect a multiplier effect to result from the decrease in government spending? Explain how the multiplier effects arise and how they can amplify the impacts of the initial budget cuts on the economy. My answer to this question is yes, there will be a multiplier effect, because multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus MPC, which MPC equals to marginal propensity to consume. And now, because price level goes down, so does people's income. Therefore, marginal propensity to consume will goes down, and then multiplier will goes up. And by multiplier's definition, the impacts of the initial budget cut on the economy will be amplified. Question 3. How will these budget cuts directly affect public saving? How will be the effects on demand and supply in Taiwan's loanable funds markets? How will the real interest rates, private investments, private saving, and national saving be affected? Supports your reasoning with both descriptive and graphical analysis. In this question, we can know that public saving will increases. Why? Because public saving is tax minus government spending, and suppose that tax remains, and government spending, as we can infer from the previous questions, government spending will decreases. So public saving will increases. Also, we can answer this question with graphical analysis, because we said that public saving will increases. So we can know that the supply of Taiwan's loanable fund markets will shift to the right, and then the quantity of outputs will increases, but the real interest rate will decreases. And how about real interest rates, private investments, private saving, and national saving be affected? We already know that real interest rates will decrease, and that's because there are more funds available because government cuts its spending. So the price of borrowing will be lower, and private investments will increases. That's quite obvious because when the real interest rate decreases, then firms will more tend to borrow money. And then, but private saving will decreases because when governments cut its spending and the price level falls, the national income will fall as well, and households have less income. And since saving comes after consumption, saving will decreases. When it comes to national saving, we can know that national saving equals public saving plus national saving. But because private saving will increases and public saving will decreases, the effects on national saving will be ambiguous. And question 4, based on your analysis in question 3, what will happen to Taiwan's net capital outflow? Provide both descriptive and graphical explanations for your answer. The answer is national capital outflow will increase. In markets of loanable funds, since national saving increases, the supply curve will shift right. Therefore, real interest rate decreases and the amount of net capital outflow rises. Let's answer this question with graphical analysis. First, we can infer that the supply curve in the markets of loanable funds shift to right, so the quantity of loanable funds will increases, while the real interest rates will decreases. And both markets of loanable funds and net capital outflow have the same vertical axis called real interest rates, so we can combine them together. We already know that the real interest rates in markets of loanable funds will decrease. So the real interest rates in net capital outflow will decrease as well. So the net capital outflow will move along the curve and making itself more and more increases. Question 5. How will the change in net capital outflow affect the supply of new Taiwan dollars in the foreign currency exchange markets? Use a graphical analysis to show the impacts on the real exchange rates and Taiwan's trade balance, also net exports. In the diagram, place the real exchange rate on the vertical axis and the quantity of new Taiwan dollars exchanged into foreign currency on the horizontal axis. Now please recall the previous diagrams that we have for the previous questions. And we can know that the apply of the new Taiwan dollars in the foreign currency exchange markets will increase. Okay, now just a brief review that the markets of global funds, its supply curve will shift to right, and the quantity of global funds will increase and the real interest rates will decrease. And because the net capital outflow have the same vertical axis with markets of global funds, so we can know that the net capital outflow will increase. So now let's take a look of the diagrams below. That is the markets of foreign currency exchange. And because we can know that the net capital outflow already increases, so and since the supply of markets of foreign currency exchange is from net capital outflow, so the supply of these markets will shift to right, making the quantity of dollars to increases and real exchange rates to decreases. Question 6. Based on your previous analysis in questions 3 and 5, how will these budget cuts indirectly influence Taiwan's aggregate demand? By summarizing the direct impacts of reduced government spending, the multiplier effects and the indirect effects via the loanable funds and foreign exchange markets, do you expect aggregate demand in Taiwan to increase or decrease as a result of the legislative yuan's budget cuts? I have made a diagram that shows the effects, direction, and strength for those variables. First is the direct cuts in government spending. It decreases, and the multiplier effect decreases too, while the private investments will increase and the next aspect also increases. We can know that the direct cuts in government spending has the strongest strength because when you cut the spending, it is the direct one, while the multiplier effect has a moderate strong strength for it because the multiplier effect is quite indirect, but it also has its strength. While private investment and next exports only have partial offsets, so the strength is the weakest one. Aggregate demand in Taiwan is likely to decrease overall due to the strong direct and multiplied effects of reduced government spending that we can infer from the previous diagram. While the increases in investment and next exports have cushioned fall, they are unlikely to fully offset the immediate contractionary impacts, especially in the short run. So for question 6, aggregate demand in Taiwan to decrease as a result of legislative yuan's budget cuts.
After overcoming all three challenges, thank goodness, I got a passing badge. It's time to chill again. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Peace out.